Hello science fans and welcome to SHE-ensya. Today, we go back to basics and talk about how living things on Earth survive. In our previous Back to Basics video, we talked about how living things on Earth are organized. As a reminder, its basic unit is the individual that falls within a species. Individuals eventually form populations, which are groups of organisms living together at the same place at the same time. A habitat where these organisms live very rarely have only one species. So in a particular location or habitat, you would often have a community, which is a group of different species living together at the same place at the same time. A community and the non-living components in that location combined form unique ecosystems. And a combination of ecosystems with similar characteristics are called biomes. And all the biomes combined form the biosphere. Despite this beautiful arrangement of life, the world and all the changes it encounters can be a very harsh place. So it makes me wonder, how do living things survive? It starts with the flow of energy in an ecosystem. We have our producers, plants and algae that are also called autotrophs that create chemical energy from sunlight. Herbivores are animals that eat only plants, and omnivores, animals that eat both plants and animals, eventually eat our producers. These organisms, together with carnivores, animals that can eat only other animals, are called consumers because they can only get energy by consuming other organisms. All the interactions among these living things and how they interact with the non-living abiotic components form a complex web of life. Each species eventually forms a unique role in the ecosystem, called its niche. And as long as the environment stays relatively the same, then the ecosystem and all of its components will remain stable. But the environment doesn't remain stable all the time. Throughout the history of Earth, we've encountered massive volcanic eruptions, asteroid strikes, and even man-made global warming, all of which causes extreme environmental changes that lead to mass extinction. And yet, somehow, organisms have found a way to survive. In evolutionary theory and ecology, adaptation is the biological mechanism that an organism employs in order to adjust to the changes in its environment so that it will survive. Organisms can adapt in two general ways: biological and behavioral. Biological or structural adaptation results to an alteration in bodily functions. An example of biological adaptation can be seen in the bodies of people living in high altitudes, such as Tibet. Tibetans live at altitudes where oxygen levels are up to 40% lower than at sea level. Breathing air this thin can cause most people to get sick, but Tibetans have evolved changes in their body chemistry. You see, most people can survive at high altitudes for a short period of time because their bodies raise their levels of hemoglobin, the protein that transports oxygen in our blood. However, continuously having high amounts of hemoglobin in our blood can become dangerous, so it is not a good long-term solution for survival in high altitudes. Tibetans seem to have evolved genetic mutations that allow them to use oxygen far more efficiently without the need for extra hemoglobin. And it is mutations that are at the heart of biological adaptation. Most of the times, they make us sick, but occasionally they can lead to structural changes that would help an organism better survive altered environments. And this applies to why we have long-necked giraffes, finches with different beak shapes that help them get the available food in their primary habitat, and the ability to blend with the environment called camouflage that helps prey hide from predators or helps predators sneak up to prey better. But not all forms of adaptation require a genetic mutation. Some involve changes in habits or activities, which are then called behavioral adaptation. An example of an organism with behavioral adaptation would be emperor penguins. Emperor penguins breed almost exclusively on sea ice, and they are perhaps the only species of birds that never set foot on land. Their eggs are laid in May and June when the average temperature is around -20 degrees Celsius going down to -50 degrees Celsius, and with winds that gust up to 200 kilometers per hour. During this time, males sit incubating their eggs at an average of 115 days, sometimes extending up to 120 days, where they lose about 40% of their body weight. They survive by huddling together for warmth, very unusual behavior for adults of other penguin species, which are usually aggressively territorial. Without this huddling behavior, this behavioral modification, they would not be able to survive the challenges of fasting, cold temperatures, and hurricane-force winds, and thus they would not be able to live and breed the way they do. Other forms of behavioral adaptation include hibernation during winter months to conserve energy, the migration of animals that coincides with the changing of seasons in various locations all over the world, and even instinctive behavior such as a dog drooling at the sight of food. And so it is the changes in the environment and the mixture of biological and behavioral adaptation that has led to the huge diversity of life on planet Earth. And that's it for this week's Back to Basics video. Just remember, the immediate survival of an organism depends on the flow of energy from producers to various consumers. But survival during extreme changes in the environment require adaptation. One type of adaptation is biological, where changes in structure or physiology occurs that helps in survival. While another type of adaptation is behavioral, where changes in manner or activities or even habits occur in order to increase chances of survival. It is marvelous how
life finds a way.
In this strange, dangerous, beautiful world. And it is in understanding how living things have survived for thousands of years that could allow our own species to survive for long also. I hope you were able to learn something from our short video on how living things survive and adapt on planet Earth. If you did, I hope you can give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please don't hesitate to message me, your resident Filipina scientist, in the comments section below. Thank you very much, and see you around!